Well, I'm really glad you've joined us again for one of our small group sessions. We talked on the weekend, and I told a story on the weekend about a little dog that she wanted and got. But I do want you to know that God intervened and kind of saved our marriage by removing the dog from our family. And what happened is we were going on a trip. We were going to go on vacation, and so Julie arranged for some of our friends to watch the dog. And one other thing that I didn't tell you on Sunday that I think is an important thing too, in her attempt to try to get me to like the dog, she named it Cowboy, as in Dallas Cowboys, but that didn't work either. So anyway, she arranges this family to watch the dog, and we're on vacation. And while we're on vacation, the dog ran out into the backyard, and one of the girls in the family was practicing her golf game and took a mighty swing, and Cowboy was no longer with us after that swing. And so God took care of the whole situation, and it just worked out really well, at least for me. There was a lot of heartbreak on the other side. But anyway, Cowboy got a nice burial, and that was kind of the end of that.
Sad story.
We're grateful I'm grateful we don't have any more indoor animals at this point. So, so I told you I would tell you the rest of the story.
For now.
So there's the rest of the story. So one of the things we talked about in the message on the weekend was about your most valuable possession. And we were talking a little earlier about maybe what ours is, and we think maybe it might be the same for most everybody, is probably your home is something that you have, if we're talking pure value, you've probably put more into your home maybe than anything else. And so we're talking about, okay, so what do you do? How do we take care of the house? What's some ways that you see us doing that?
Well, we make improvements to it. When we bought our house, it was old and needed some restoration, so we worked hard on that. Also cleaning it regularly, taking care of it. We invite people in to see our home. We celebrate the holidays here. It's just the place our grown kids know they can come home to and feel safe. We have we've hosted parties here, and we have our parents come, and we love to show off the new things we've done, the improvements we've made to the house, and take pictures of it, and just proud of our home.
Yeah, and we'll pay somebody to come do something that maybe we don't know how to do, or we'll take the time to pull up a YouTube video and actually learn how to do something, because it's important to take care of that, because it's something of value. And if you don't take care of that, ultimately one day you're living in a shack that has fallen down around you. And so I think that was kind of the idea, and I think most of us would agree that a house is something you got to continually maintain. One of the other things we talked about was that although we wouldn't call our kids a possession, we're talking about something that's incredibly valuable to us, and that is our kids. And we go to great lengths to make sure they're fed and that they're clean most of the time, and just make sure that they have what they need without going overboard, and trying to raise them in a good way so they become good people and follow God with their life. And so they're valuable, and so you want to know where they are, so we keep tabs on where our kids are, and we don't want to lose that, because it's so valuable to us. Although there was one time where when Cammie was first born, we went into a barbecue restaurant, and as we were leaving, we were standing out in the parking lot with some friends talking about whatever, and all of a sudden one of the Smoky Mo's workers came out carrying Cammie in her car carrier, saying, "Hey, did y'all forget something?" And we had forgotten her. And so
well, it'd been a while since we'd had kids. So
it had been a little while.
The big kids were 8 and 10, and we had this tiny new baby, and I thought he had her. And
so 9 out of 10 times we know where our kids are. So we're about 90%.
Yeah.
Maybe
pretty good batting average.
Maybe everybody can relate to that a little bit. I'm not sure. So we talked about valuing each other above the other, and that can take on some negative connotations for sure, just at the first hearing of that. And so what are maybe some specific things that you would do to try to value our relationship, or that we would do to value one another above ourselves?
Well, I know early on when we were dating at 18, 19 years old, I was the baby of my family, very indulged, very spoiled by my older sister and my parents. So Shane came from a family of 3 boys, and he was the middle child and had always had to kind of accommodate everyone else. And so I know that, I remember a time when we were eating out, and it was like Taco Bell or something, but you'd gone up and got the drinks and set them down, and we would drink the same drink back then, and I reached over to grab mine, and you said, "Why do you always grab the best for yourself?" And I was like, I can't believe you just said that to me. Yeah. But, he's a very forthright guy.
And it was probably a little rude. I was 19.
Yeah. But it was totally right, because that was my MO, is if there was 2 brownies, I'm going to get the bigger one. If there was something dirty, I was going to pick the clean one. And that's just me looking out for me. But from that very conversation, that day in the Taco Bell, I have remembered that. And I've thought, I'm not going to take the best for myself. I want that for you, to show you that I love you. Another thing I think about is, we don't have a lot of time to sit and watch TV when it really is on, so we record our shows. So there's a couple shows that are our shows that we only watch together.
Right.
I mean, you have your shows, I have mine, but there are times when, like, I'm here at the house and I'm thinking, oh, there's a new one recorded. I'm going to watch that, but I think, I'm going to wait and watch it with you. And that's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because there's nothing like turning that on at night and it says, resume.
Oh, then you're caught.
I'm like,
then you're caught, yeah. Well, and I've tried it where I didn't tell you I'd watched our show, and then I'm like, and you're like, did you already see this? So, it's a minor sacrifice, but that's something I think, just thinking of the other person, thinking, how does this affect the person I love?
Yeah, and I think what's important about those things is, even though, okay, it's a brownie or it's a TV show, and those things seem like really small things, it is in the small things that it makes the difference, because it's all of those little nagging things. It's usually not in the glaring things. It's in all of those little nagging things that happen over and over and over, to where you just start assuming this person is always going to take the best for themselves. And then that gets in your head. And as your relationship rolls on, all of a sudden now you're thinking that all the time, which is just negative thinking towards this person in your life. And so that doesn't go well. So I know those seem like small things, but in the end, they build up to be a lot of big things.
Right. Well, and when you stop thinking about the other person, or you just don't care, that's a definite red flag for a relationship. When you think, I don't care, I'm going to get what's mine.
Right.
And we're more concerned about our rights. That is and the apathy that can set in, I think, is really detrimental to relationships. And we often don't even realize it, because it is in the small things.
Yeah. So we talked also on the weekend about being maybe with somebody who is, they're famous, or somebody that is the most important person in the room. And I know you and I had an experience like that one time. We were at a conference, and we were invited to hang out with the Christian group Mercy Me. If you know the song Imagine that played forever and ever, Bart, who wrote that, their band invited us to kind of hang out with them for that day, and we got on their bus and went and ate, and got to go backstage and hang out in the lounge backstage with them and all of that kind of stuff. And it was just cool. It was just a really neat experience, and they were just becoming someone in that musical realm. But I think about that, and I think, I never felt awkward with them. It never was a place where they were like looking down, or why are you guys here? Or, we sat across the table at lunch, and we just ate lunch, and we talked about families, and we talked about all of that. And to me, that was just such a great example of their humility to us, of just allowing us to be people with them, because in the end, that's it. We're all just people. Right. And they didn't hold that over us, although they were much more important than us in that setting, probably in any setting.
Right.
But
and it was an honor for us to get that opportunity to hang out with them. But they were truly interested. They were asking us about our lives.
Yeah.
And they weren't fake. They were real and authentic. I loved that.
Right. Yeah. It was. It was really cool. So for us, or for me, it made us feel like we were kind of something too. And maybe not more than everybody else, but like we were something, because we were treated like someone of value that day by them. And I think that's such the perfect example of how to treat someone of value, because really, as we've talked about, they place themselves at least equal with us and maybe in some cases even underneath us to take us somewhere and say, hey, y'all come with us. You come be a part of what we're doing. And so it just, it made us feel valued. And I think that's the whole point in your relationship is you do those kinds of things to show value. One that I think you do a really good job with is we like to, as many nights as we can, sit at the table and have dinner together as a family. We just think that's really, really important to make sure your family gathers up several times a week. And no TV, no phones, and just be together and let the conversation happen of what happened at school and what are you up to, and typically there's some laughter, and it's just it's a great time. But one of the things you always do, and I appreciate because I always feel valued, is when we sit at the table, we'll pray for our meal, and then you put food on my plate. And I've never asked you to do that, but I always just feel incredibly valued that you take my plate and you put food on it. And you don't have to do that. I mean, obviously I'm capable of putting food on my own plate, but that's just something you've always done for a long time. And there's been a lot of ramifications for that. And so, I mean, I personally appreciate that. And I think that's the perfect example of something small that means a whole lot, of placing yourself. And never do I ever think, woman, you better get my food, right? I mean, it just never comes across like that. And I don't think, and I always try to say thank you because, I'm grateful that you would serve me like that in those times. And so I think that's a really good example of that.
I had read about that a long time ago. If you treat your husband as the king of the castle, or that he has honor in your home, in front of your children, in front of your guests, that's just going to pay off in the long run. And it has. And I don't do it to try to get something. And now I don't even think about it. It's just what we do. And our children know that. And even if my parents are here, I still place my husband in honor because I want him to know he is the number one person in my life. So he gets the best brownie now.
So, okay, so that's going to feel a little ugly to some people, right? Because that's not going to feel like, oh, well, if I do that, if I put him like that, he's going to take advantage of that, or he's not been nice to me, so there's no way I'm serving him. So what about that? I mean, because there's probably been some days we've come to the table, I might not have been very nice, and yet you still did that. What runs through your head about that?
Yeah, well, I probably might slap your mashed potatoes on a little too vigorously,
right.
But I think it's a humbling thing that I choose to do because I know my natural tendency is selfishness. Naturally, I'm going to take care of me first.
Yeah, that's probably true of all of us, right?
Right. But it's reminding myself and everyone else at the table that you are valuable. Not more valuable than any other person in our family, but you're valuable to me.
Right.
And I think you create patterns like that, like you bring me my coffee in the morning. You make my coffee and you make it better than I do. It always tastes better when you make it. And you bring that to me not because you have extra time and I don't. You just do that for me as a kindness. And I think those thoughtful gestures and those little habits that you create are positive things that you build your relationship on.
Yeah. Well, and I think noticing that and paying attention to that, but somebody has to start that, and I think that's what I'm getting at. Somebody has to begin that process of saying, I'm going to put myself underneath you, and that may not pay off for a while. And that may not work for a while. In fact, it may never pay off. But you don't do it to get a payoff.
Right.
You do it because it's absolutely the thing for you to do. And the thing for me to do is to place ourselves underneath each other and submit to one another as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of what we're talking about. But I just know that doesn't always feel good to me.
Well, and if it was expected and demanded, it would feel differently. But it's a gift I give, and you with the coffee and things like that, things you do for me, those are ways of showing love. It's an act of service. It's a gift. It's not I better do this or you're going to gripe at me.
Yeah. So one of the other major topics that we talked about in the message on Sunday was opting for relationship over being right, opting for relationship over respect or anything else. And our example obviously is Jesus of that, but opting for relationship. So that's kind of a big deal. What about you? Where does that kind of land with you?
Well, I think that it's often the time that I want to be told that I'm right, But in the end, I know our relationship matters more, and it may not be, there's not always a right and a wrong to a lot of situations too. Yeah. Sometimes it's gray, it doesn't really matter, it's not that big of a deal. But in the end, I want to have a relationship. The illustration that I can think of most is with our children, especially with when our kids were teenagers, and now as they're even young adults, knowing that I'm not going to agree with every decision they make. I'm not going to like everything they do with their finances, with their education, but in the end, I care more about our relationship.
Right.
And it's not my job to tell everybody what to do or to control anybody. So do I want to spout off my opinion and criticize, or do I want to have a relationship with that person?
Yeah.
And that is true in marriage as well.
Yeah. So we had a situation in our marriage about this. It's been probably a little over a year ago. And as you mentioned, that, you know, the house we bought is an older house, and one of the things that made it old is that it didn't really officially have a master bedroom in it. Had bedrooms, but not a master bedroom, and so we've always wanted to add a master bedroom, and this past year we did that. But coming into that, I had one idea of where I thought it should go, and you had a completely different idea of where you thought it should go. Now, we both agreed we wanted to build it, and we both agreed kind of what we wanted in it, but where? And so there was some back and forth with that, and you know, I couldn't really understand why you would want to do what you wanted to do, and there were some things about what I wanted to do you didn't want me to do for future purposes, and so we just were kind of back and forth on this for a long time. And one day, after you had kind of really described why you wanted it where you wanted it, I was outside and I was standing and just kind of looking at the area you were talking about, and I was leaning up against the fence. And the thought came to me, what does this really matter? In the end, we want a master bedroom. And what's it matter if it's where I want it or where you want it? What's important is that we do it. So it doesn't matter whose way we do it. So let's just do it your way. Because in the end, I wanted you to have your house where you were just happy in your house and you were happy with this bedroom. And so we just opted, or I opted for you, right? I'm going your way. And that's the reason why that's built today where it's built, is because I just wanted it to be a happy place for you and a good place for you. And if that was it, okay, I'm good. We've talked back and forth about that, you know. Could it have worked both places? Of course it could have worked both places. But the fact is that what happened is we built it where you wanted it. And I think that's just one of those examples.
Right. And once the decision was made, we were in it together. And
right.
That's what I love, is once we finally came to a conclusion. And part of that was I wasn't explaining myself very well. We had already, you know, we had a couple people's opinion that it should be one place. But once I gave you a pros and a cons and we really discussed it, then we made the decision. And then we were in it together. Yeah. And every part of that bedroom and bathroom combination was our decisions together. And that's my favorite place in the world now. And I love it. And I appreciate it and tell you that all the time, how much I love what we did here.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's just one of those things about mutual submission, of just going, okay, let's do it your way this time, right? Okay. Let's go your way. It doesn't always have to be mine. Let's go your way. And so I think we have things like that, and different people have things that happen like that. And I think that, if you think about mutual submission, is like, what does it really matter? Do I just need to be right? Or are we going to keep this relationship? Because if I just need to be right, what I'm actually doing is shutting this relationship down. And all of those steps are shutting a relationship down. And that's not the intent. The intent is to keep the relationship going forward. So I think that happens to all of us a whole lot. And so I hope you'll stop and think about some of the ways that you can submit to each other this week, some of the ways that you can opt for a relationship, not just being right, and really dig deep about what that is, and why do I need to be right in this? What does it really matter in the end? And I think all of those things really lead up to this thing we call the big dilemma, and that is are we going to keep the relationship going, or are we going to opt for me, or am I going to opt for us? Right. And so I think that's such a big part of that. Well, I hope your group has a great discussion around this. Thanks for joining us, and we'll just see you next time.